Greatest integer function. In this lesson, we're going to identify and interpret a greatest integer function. Recall, integers are whole numbers and their opposites. So for whole numbers, start at 0 and they go on, such as 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. When you include the negatives there, -1, -2, -3, and so forth, then they are called integers. So again, integers are their whole numbers and their opposites. Now the thing with the greatest integer function, it will pair every real number x with the greatest integer less than or equal to x. So the function f of x equals the greatest integer of x. So what that means in plain English is if we were to take a number and plug it into the greatest integer function of x. For example, here, find the greatest integer of 7.3. You want to look at a number of what you're going to spit out. It's going to be an integer. We're given a decimal, and what's going to come out, the output has to be a whole number integer. It cannot be another decimal. It cannot be a fraction, only an integer. And it has to be an integer that is, here's the key, less than that 7.3. Okay, now the only way it could be equal to is if it's an integer. And since this is not an integer, we're looking for a number that is smaller than 7.3 and it's an integer. So let's take a look at the number line, because we want to find what is the greatest integer that's less than or equal to 7.3. So on the number line, 7.3 is going to be between 7 and 8. So the number that is less than would be to the left of that, not to the right. So be careful, we're not rounding up, but instead you're going to have to round down. So anytime you have a decimal, you have to round down. It is not 8, because 8 is not less than 7.3. You're going to go to the left and round down, and it is 7. So the greatest integer of 7.3 is 7. The greatest integer that's less than or equal to 7.3 is 7. So again, if you have a decimal, always round down. In other words, move to the left. If your greatest integer number that you're seeking to find is already a whole number, then it's going to be that same number. And in that case, the rule says it would be equal to that. We'll do some more practice. No worries. You got this. Here we want to find the greatest integer that is less than or equal to -1.5. So let's take a look at our number line and identify where -1.5 is. We know it's going to be on the negative side, and it's actually going to be between -1 and -2. So since we want to get an integer that is less than -1.5, we again don't want to round up. So we don't want -1, because -1 would be greater. We want -2 because it is a number that is smaller than -1.5. So therefore, the greatest integer that's less than -1.5 equals -2. Next, I want to find what is the greatest integer that is less than or equal to 0.5. So 0.5 is about a half. It's the same as a half. And you know a half is a positive number, and it is between 0 and 1. So what I want to know then is, what is the greatest whole number integer that's smaller than or less than a half, 0.5? So it's not going to be 1, because 1 would be greater. I don't want greater. I want the integer that's less than that, and that would be 0. So the answer here again is whatever is less than that number, you're rounding down, and in this case it is 0. Here we want to find the greatest integer that is less than or equal to 6. Now recall, the rule is less than or equal to that number. Now, we are only looking for less than if it is not an integer. But if it is an integer, such as in this case, then we are looking for a number that is the same as, which is actually 6. So again, if we were to look at this on the number line, 6 is already an integer. And since it is an integer, 6 is equal to 6. So therefore, the greatest integer of 6 is 6. Here I want to know what is the greatest integer that is less than or equal to pi. Recall, pi is approximately 3.14. So we want to go and look at our number line. 3.4 will be between 3 and 4. But what we want is to get an output of an integer, a whole number, not a decimal. So what is the closest one that is less than 3.14? We're going to move to the left, not to the right. We round down, and that will give us the value of 3. So the greatest integer that is less than pi would be 3. And there you have it.